Hi, it's Alaska Granny. We seem to be facing some challenging times, and that includes food storage. Today I wanted to share with you some unexpected foods that can actually last a long time in your pantry. These may be foods you're familiar with, but there also might be a few surprises, foods you hadn't thought about that you could add to your food storage pantry. When we go to the store, it's harder to find the basic foods that we've been looking for. Everybody's looking for rice, beans, canned soups, and it can be hard to find the things that we want. But if you think of the same categories of food, sometimes you can find a substitute for a food that you were looking for. For example, dried fruit. Look through your store for the dried fruit. I had to look hard to find it. They moved it onto the snack aisle. It was with cookies and nuts, and it was only a shelf that was only this wide, but they were still there while most of the cans of fruit were empty. I was able to get dried prunes, apricots, and craisin. They also have raisins, dates, and mango. Look for dried fruits in varieties that your family will eat. Dried fruits already have a shelf life of at least a year, and if you store them in an airtight container like a clean canning jar, these can last much longer. Maybe you already have a food storage type container that you could store some of these dried fruits, then you'll have an extra supply of fruit in your long-term food storage. Everybody knows about beans and rice, but we go and look for just beans and rice. But there are overlooked legumes that are in the bean category, like lentils and split peas. These are very nutritious. They're easy to prepare. You don't have to soak them to prepare them. Lentils are very versatile. You can incorporate them into all kinds of recipes, and I'll put a link to a video I made about a vegan lentil curry, which is just made from food storage. It's very simple to make. It's one of my pantry clean-out recipes that's cheap, fast, filling, and delicious. So when you go to the bean aisle, look high and low for varieties that maybe you don't already have in your food stockpile. Then you'll have the ability to add more food to your stockpile that's high in protein and easy to prepare. You can even make something as simple as a cup of lentils with a cup of rice in a few cups of water and allow it to simmer, and you can have a very filling soup that can go a long way when you don't have very much food or very much money. Use something as simple as a clean canning jar to store your lentils and peas. Maybe you're familiar with winter squash, but did you realize they're a great way to store fresh produce just in your pantry for months at a time? Spaghetti squash, butternut squash, and acorn squash are all winter squashes. Make sure that the surface is hard. There's nothing soft around the stem, and you don't see any blemishes for them to last the longest. Spaghetti squash, acorn squash, and butternut squash, it allows you to store them in your pantry for months at a time. If you keep these in a cool, dry place, they can stay fresh all the way through the entire winter, which is why they're called winter squash. They're very nutritious, they're easy to store, just in their natural container. I'll put a link to a video I made on how to cook a spaghetti squash in a crock pot, and I'll also put a link to a video I made about butternut squash soup that's also made in your crock pot. They're easy, delicious, filling, and can come right out of your pantry with fresh produce. Ghee is another product that can last for a long time, and many people don't even think about it. It's clarified butter. You basically have butter that's shelf stable and can store in your pantry. It can be more expensive to buy ghee than regular butter, but it can last in your pantry for several years. There are videos online of how to make your own ghee. I like to buy it already prepackaged so that I know that it's safe to store in my pantry for several years. Once you open the ghee, you can leave it sitting at room temperature for about 3 months, or you can store the opened container in your refrigerator for up to a year. So ghee is a great way to store butter in your food storage pantry. How can you use ghee just like you would fresh butter? Spread it on some bread, drizzle it over fresh vegetables, add a little to some popcorn. Seasoning pouches and bouillon cubes are also a great way to add variety to your long-term food storage for very little money, and they don't take up very much space. You can buy the bouillon in little cubes. I like to seal it up in a mason canning jar because the more air you keep away from them, the longer they last. Some of the seasoning mixes come in little packages or envelopes. You can store these little packets in a clean jar because that helps keep them safer than just storing them in a cardboard box. That way you make sure nothing pokes a little hole in this, nothing chews on it, and you're keeping the most air out of your seasoning mixes as you possibly can. The more air you keep away from the foods, the longer it's going to last. Seasoning pouches and bouillon cubes are great. You can add some boiling water and even just have a hot, tasty drink. You can add them into your recipes with your beans and rice or any of the other kinds of foods that you're preparing. And it can help stretch your food storage longer with more variety for very little money. Look for nutritional supplements that are milkshakes designed for nutrition. It may not be something that you choose to eat, but if you didn't have anything else to eat, something like this could be a meal replacement or an addition to make sure that you're getting the protein, the nutrition, the energy that you need for all kinds of situations. My family thinks that one of my best tips ever is frozen pizza for long-term food storage. There's nothing that gives you normalcy like having something as simple as a pizza. Frozen pizza can last at least a year in your freezer unless somebody gets to it first. If you have room in your freezer, put a few pizzas. Then if no one feels like cooking or the cupboards are looking pretty bare, the side of a frozen pizza, warm and toasty coming out of your oven, can be a very special meal on a lot of different occasions. These are some of the unexpected food storage items that I've been adding to my food storage, so I thought I would share those tips with you. If there's an unexpected item that you're adding to your long-term food storage, leave it in the comments below so that we can learn from each other to make the best of our food storage stockpile for whatever comes our way. If you liked my video, I hope you'll share it with someone else who might enjoy it. Learn more at alaskagranny.com and please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.